the secrets of true success in life. The achievers of our time are ready through the Great Mind program on NTA Oshogo to reveal to you the secrets of their success in their different vocations. The Great Mind is a program that can help you to formulate the real philosophy of success through the life history and experiences of the great men and women you get opportunity to be meeting on the program.
My destiny can never be changed at all. Nothing can change my destiny, nothing can change it. Nothing can tamper with my destiny. Good destiny I choose from God.
This is another edition of the program, The Great Mind. I'm Paul Lawuyi. This week we are focusing on the Secretary General of the African Principles. He is Mr. Yinka Lawuyi. How did he start his life? What are the prices paid by him before he arrived at the present feat? Come along with me as I unfold his life history unto you. The Secretary General of the African Convention of Principles, Mr. Yinka Lawuyi, was born in this house at Ayoola compound in Iresi, Boluwadro local government, Osun State, 54 years ago to Mrs. Esther Ajayi and late John Folorunsho Lawuyi, popularly called F. Law, in his lifetime. His father was a school principal, while his mother was also an head of school. He is the third of 5 children who are all teachers. His senior brother is a professor, while the rest are now principals and vice principal. Mr. Yinka Lawuyi started his elementary education at Baptist Primary School, Isheki Oloroede, from where he proceeded to Baptist High School, Ejigo.
After my secondary school education, I was admitted to the University of Ife. I left Ife 77, 78. 1987, I was in UI for my postgraduate diploma in education. I attempted a master's program, but I dropped midway. I had to stop the program because I did not get any permission for it, any excuse, any authority to pursue it, so I had to drop. But for my weekends, I attended the Nigerian Institute of Journalism in Ogba, Lagos. I did a diploma. I became a school principal. And after that, after a stint at TESCOM, I incidentally was the first teacher to be deployed to Osun State Teaching Service Commission when it was created. I have a passion for teaching. It will interest you that when I was in my final year in the university, and had opportunities of becoming a custom officer, immigration officer. So in those days, they will come to the university to recruit you. I filled the form to become an education officer in the federal ministry because I think that's what we are used to in the environment and the background. My background was the sort that had prepared me for teaching. I enjoyed it. I felt my father was a successful man, was a field man. And I saw no reason why I should not do his line. I thank God that I'm from such a family. We were never rich, we were never poor. We were able to afford 3 square meals. But my father was a strict disciplinarian. Whoever come across and knows a little about F law will tell you he retired as a principal of Baptist Training College. He will tell you he was a strict disciplinarian.
Mr. Yinka Lawuyi started making history in 1992 as he was the first teacher to be seconded to TESCOM. By 1999, where he returned to the school system as a principal. That same year, he became the Assistant Public Relations Officer of ANCOPS. A year later, he became the Acting State Secretary and became the Substantive State Secretary of ANCOPS in the year 2000. In 2003, Mr. Yinka Lawuyi also made an history as he became the first man from the core Oodua states to become the National Secretary of ANCOPS and in Nairobi, Kenya in 2004, he emerged the very first Nigerian to become the Secretary General of the African Convention of Principals.
I had served as the State Secretary of Osun State and Corps. That's All Nigeria Conference of Principals of Secondary Schools. I served as the National Secretary and happened to be the first man from the core Yoruba speaking area to have served as the National Secretary of All Nigerian Conference of Principals, and incidentally and providentially too, the first Nigerian to serve as the General Secretary of the African Convention of Principals.
He lists his experience in this office.
I've traveled a lot. Within a year of becoming the National Secretary of All Nigerian Conference of Principals, I traveled around the 36 states of the Federation. And as the Secretary of the African Convention of Principals, I've been to East Africa, South Africa, North Africa, and of course some of the countries in West Africa. Been to Ghana, been to Gambia, been to Egypt, I've been to Joburg, I've been to Pretoria, name it. But I thank God for His journey mercies, for His mercies on me.
Mr. Yinka Lawuyi, who is an outstanding school administrator with a track record and good leadership qualities, served on the publicity committee of Ifesowopo Group that saw to the birth of Buluwaduru local government. As the National Secretary of Iresi Progressive Union, he has been using his connections for the progress and development of his hometown, Iresi. In the year 2006, in recognition of the contributions of Mr. Yinka Lawuyi to the educational development in Osun State and Nigeria at large, the state government an award of excellence. Since it is an acknowledged fact that for a man to succeed in life, he must have the backing of Almighty God and his wife. Mr. Yinka Lawuyi is happily married to Foluke Ayodele ni Adediran.
I met my wife at Ayoola. Our parents, that's our own parents and mine, especially our daddy, our fathers, were working at Baptist College Ayoola. What attracted me to her? Yeah. I was satisfied with her upbringing. She was gentle, she was easygoing, and more importantly, she had a moral upbringing. She was morally upright, let me put it that way. The discipline she had from her parents, appealed to me, because we lived just across the road, and I could see the way they were, involved, the involvement, the way the children were being brought up. It's a good family. The upbringing was good. The training was okay by me. She trained as a nurse, and I have no objections. I have no reservations about her.
The present principal and vice principal of Baptist High School, Ejigbo, which Yinka Lawuyi attended 4 decades ago, attested to the fact that Mr. Yinka Lawuyi is a pride of the teaching profession.
I feel grateful to him that he has been able to exalt the name of Ejigbo Baptist High School. He was well trained in this place. He passed through the school, and then he got real moral training in the school. That's very good.
Mr. Yinka Lawuyi is a very nice man. He was one of our principals in this local government some time ago. Masifa Community Grammar School, and the man did very well. In fact, the man is an asset to not only to the course but to the teaching profession in this country. Probably because he inherited that from the father. Baba Lawuyi, that's the father of Mr. Yinka Lawuyi, was my tutor at Baptist College in 1975 to 1978. Mr. Yinka Lawuyi is a principal man, a very nice man, he's a friend to everybody. In fact, the best language I can use for him is the man of the people. He left this place some time ago, and anytime he's come around, it will appear as if he's just around. So we wish him the best.
Pa Moses Bamidele Okundele, who is also an educationist, is a good friend of the late father of Yinka Lawuyi.
Very intelligent, hardworking, and behaving like a godly man.
Professor Tunde Lawuyi is the senior brother of Yinka Lawuyi.
He is a likable fellow, a very quiet, unassuming, but very intelligent, articulate person. He looks simple on the outside, but he has a very complex mind, because he is able to turn issues around, look at issues very deeply, and sometimes come out with positions that may be quite different from those held by people who are around or close to him. So in that way, sometimes it could be against, general trend. And when that happens, he appears to be a bit more vigorous, more assertive, because he wants to be convincing. Generally, sometimes he has his way because of the weight of his evidence and the way in which he articulates his facts. But sometimes too, he finds himself in the opposition, and I don't think that is a position that quite often he likes. But one thing about him, wherever he is easily recognized, and people know him to be very generous. In fact, that probably is his strength, but it's also his weakness. He's extremely generous. In fact, he could be kind to anybody, whether he knows you or not, on the street. And sometimes that has the impression, or gives the impression of somebody who is a spendthrift. But really, it is a sign of goodwill. He cultivates this aura that enable people to radiate, to move towards him, and generally, maybe because of that closeness, because of that appreciation of him as a person, as a character, that's why he also goes his way to be extremely generous and kind to people. In fact, on the family side, he takes much after our father in being generous, extremely generous to people, and also in being very clever, very intelligent. If there is any sign of weakness at all, that's the thing that I see, namely that he could be so kind to a fault that in fact he loses sense of his own self and sense of his own immediate needs in order to please people, to make them feel happy. And then if there is also, like I said, which is the contradiction in him, at one strength or one side you see him a very clever person, but like I said, that cleverness, that attempts to make it convincing, also gives the impression that he's a bit assertive, but he's ordinarily and quite usually very cool, very calm, collected in situations that normally could have aggrieved anybody.
The Ayoola of Ejito, Chief Solomon Najani, has this relationship with Yinka Lawuyi.
Mr. Yinka Lawuyi worked with me when I was a teacher at Ayoola Grammar School. Again, when I was a principal at Monsford Community Grammar School, he was my vice principal. We worked together for about 5 years before I left that school. I observed him to be very hardworking, very responsible, painstaking and very serious somebody. He's very honest, and he's a disciplinarian. By the time we were together, I really enjoyed him. Anytime I left the school, I feel comfortable that nothing will happen until my arrival. He's a very serious worker. And apart from school activity, we are together again because by the time he was at Ejibo, we formed a Lions Club. And he was one of us, very active member. We were together until I left from the Lion Club. He's a very nice co-worker, a very nice man.
This is the comment of the head of service in Osun State, Elder Segun Akinwusi, about Mr. Yinka Lawuyi.
Nearly 35 years ago. It was circumstantial anyway. That was when I was a non-certificated teacher at the Baptist High School Ejibo. I mean uncertificated because it was then I just finished my higher school and I wanted to do something for a few months before I got admission to the university. I taught in that school for about 5 months, 1973, before I got admission to the university. And that was when he was in his final year in the secondary school. As it were, he was one of my pupils, I would say, because I had opportunity to teach his class literature in English. A few times that the principal that was teaching then was otherwise engaged. Ever since, he's been very close to me. He met me before I left the university, and that bond of the pupil teacher thing has still remained, ever since still remained. When he joined the service and was in TESCOM as a director, I was always very close to him. And I find him as a very diligent young person. Then he's always now a grown man. He's a family man. He's a very responsible person now. And that trait in him has followed him even thus far now. That he was the general secretary of this parent body of principal ANCOPS, the ANCOP national, is it ANCOPS or NUT? I think NUT in Africa. He had that award sometime around 2003 or thereabout. Has been very up and coming in his duty. I could remember also as the chairman of the Merit Award of the states some few years back, when we read his citation, his dossier, as it were, by that committee. It was one of those people that were recommended for the state award. To really attain that feat, you must have recorded some landmark achievement. I want to say that he's a very fulfilled person in his chosen career and is a role model for the younger generation.
Olùwàsí of Ìrẹsì Ọba Síkírù Adéṣeun Ìbílòyè Odùmíní II extols the good virtues of Yinka Lawuyi.
Honored son of Ìrẹsì land, the man is so good. He used to assist Ìrẹsì Ndije in all his in his own capacity, likewise of his own profession. He is a man that we're proud of in this community, and then the Kabiyesi of Ìrẹsì to pray for him that whenever he goes, he will meet the favor of God.
The vision of Mr. Yinka Lawuyi is to be more committed to service to humanity.
The future is in the hands of God. Up till now, it's God that has just been directing my ways. I've left everything to Him, and my Lord never makes mistakes. No mistakes about God. There are one or two options I'm considering. There is a possibility of my going into ecclesiastical duties. That's either going to a seminary or what have you, there is also the possibility of my serving my people if the situation requires that. But I love my own town. I want to serve my own town.
You want to join politics, sir?
If it is the wish of God.
He gives this piece of advice.
To parents, I want to say that bring up your children in the fear of the Lord. Irrespective of whatever sex they are. I'm blessed with 4 beautiful daughters. And I thank God for them. I have no cause whatsoever to regret having female children. They are a source of pride to me, every one of them. That's to the parents. And make sure you struggle to train them. And never be deterred by the cost, the circumstances. Have a determination that the children to attend very good schools. It's a pity that most of our public secondary schools bring out students that may find it difficult to pass an exam if they are locked up in a room to write the paper. I don't know if I'm passing across the message, but the unfortunate situation is that most of our students in our public secondary schools can only do well in a public exam, do very well in a public exam. There are so many reasons that one can adduce for this. Why you want to say there are some things the government needs to do, like creating an enabling atmosphere, recruiting the right quality of teachers, and having enough teachers in the classrooms, having enough classrooms, creating an environment for learning within the school. The parents have to make sure that they don't encourage their children to cheat. Exam malpractice is a cankerworm. It has to be stopped. So, if we do all this, I think we'll have a better society. But we are living in a society where we don't get our values right. We don't get our priorities right. Nobody wants to ask or wants to know where you got your money from. All we are interested is rich. Overnight, a secondary school student becomes a millionaire. You see him riding Toyota Camry, Toyota water, a Jeep, another 2-3 years. Nobody will ask questions. You see a mechanic, in no time, he has a fleet of vehicles. Nobody will ask. So I think we have to go to the basics. We have to return to the base and see, re-examine our life. Let our leaders give us an example. And the problem, again, that we have in the society is that of followership. If you cannot follow, you cannot lead. But people are in a hurry to become leaders. People are in a haste. It happens in the churches, it happens in the schools, it happens in politics, it happens within the society setup. Nobody wants to follow, nobody wants to be trained properly for anything. Everybody, a school teacher is in a hurry to become a principal. A principal is in a hurry to become a commissioner. A commissioner is in a haste to become a governor. A governor is thinking of how you become the president or become a senator. So it would be better with sufficient training, sufficient tutelage, sufficient period of understanding our leaders. I think if we do this, the society will be better for it.
With that, we are ending this week's edition of the program, The Great Mind. Join me next week, God willing, for another edition of the program as I unfold to know the life history of another great mind of our time today. Blessed.
Thank you.